Hello everyone! That's just a bit of my AC going off. But either way, hello everyone. I know which one Reggie is going to use this time. Is going to obviously use vampires. I played Himmler and Krill. What'd I do? Sorry, I screwed up a little. Turning something off real quick. But either way, upon that note, how should I put this? I've only played a bit of the vampires on early stages where I was playing as, well, Krill. Well, not Krill. You know who I am. Big wizard man, necromancer man for the vampire accounts. I don't really gel with the playstyle of the vampires, mostly because they use fear, and I prefer just mobs of giant monsters attacking, you know. Anyway, on that note, I'm jittery for some reason a little bit today. Anyway, we'll be heading into this, and we'll see what's going on. I press the button. What?
The elderly, truly some of the most terrifying creatures in the entire Warhammer universe, because they spend their entire day skittering through the forests like an osteoporotic centipede while using strange ingredients to conjure dark magic. And even if you are their ally, there's at least a 50% chance they'll forget this and shoot you with a crossbow. But we won't have to worry about that, because today we are the elderly, and we're going to be trying to survive the apocalypse. And no, I'm not talking about a flight of stairs. We're up against a vampire apocalypse, except this time I've installed a mod that increases its difficulty by 1000%, which inevitably results in this. There's only going to be two rules to win. We must 1. Assassinate Vlad von Karstein, and 2. Protect Kislev at all costs. If at any point I lose this city, I will delete the save before detonating my explosive vest, which will instantly vaporize myself along with my 200 square foot apartment.
Good lord, Reggie.
Before we begin, I have a question for you. Have you ever felt like your paintings were somehow inadequate?
No, Detroit
like
become
they lack
human.
the strength and certainty of cold, hard steel? Well, look no further, because this video is sponsored by Displate, a company which sells premium branded artwork
I've actually
printed
never
directly
gotten any of
onto a
this stuff.
sleek, smooth
I
metal
want to.
canvas. You want this item, and I'll tell you why. Because it's not okay to cut down an entire rainforest just to decorate your room. Trees are alive, and they have feelings. You know what doesn't have feelings? Rocks. We're gonna go to war with the rocks, and we're gonna make so many high-quality metal posters out of them, it's gonna be absolutely nuts. You'll be able to get whatever you're passionate about. Neo-Japanese, 18th century Spanish artwork, even Warhammer. It's all there. And the best part? They're gonna be super durable. In fact, I like to use my Displate as...
On another note, I've actually been playing through Helldivers quite a bit. Thankfully, we have beaten back the Illuminated forces. I was playing hard, and I'm like, this isn't enough. I need to go even further beyond, and actually started playing on Impossible and Helldive mode. And actually doing pretty well. And fighting back the enemies, it was kind of crazy. Because I was filled with a bunch of people who are all crazy enough to go on those difficulties and were trying as hard as they can to win. It's kind of crazy when you go up to those higher levels, how dedicated people get to the game. On another note, I do kind of want to try Display at some point.
As a ballistic shield. Legally, that's not a suggestion, just a personal preference. Additionally, Displates are incredibly easy to make. No more slamming holes in your drywall. Simply put the sticker on the wall, attach the magnet to the sticker, attach the Displate to the magnet, and luxuriate in the bliss of high culture. Also, don't forget, each Displate is a collector's item. That's why I hang mine up with the plastic wrap still on. So what are you waiting for? Click the link below and use my discount code to get some Displates for up to 35% off. And your order should reach you within 4 to 5 days directly from Europe. Thank you, Displate. Now back to the video. Alright, here we are on the bleak coast. I know it may look like the site of a nuclear detonation, but don't be deceived. It's actually much worse. Because to our north are the Dark Elves, our east, Dark Elves, and our south, yes indeed, Dark Elves. Being surrounded by this many slimy freaks has increased our chances of being victimized with a strap-on by upwards of 90%, and I don't like those odds. So I decided to start proactively killing my neighbors. After a few turns, we had made our way down the coast to a battle at Arnheim, where several elves intended to massacre us. But what they didn't realize was that I had already recruited a deranged leper who has conditioned a...
Laura Beast, huh? I The only thing I know about the Kislev faction is that a lot of them are a very good starter faction because most of them have guns and melee weapons, so they're good for people to start out with. This is coming from someone that started out with Total Warhammer 2, though, so they're not really a big thing to me.
A flock of crows to attack his enemies. The crows pecked and clawed at our adversaries, weakening them substantially and allowing my small collection of spiders to overwhelm them. This is but a fraction of the power you can unlock by becoming senile. Speaking of which, Mother Estancia has a small but formidable sweatshop called the Witch's Hut. You see, when we defeat an opponent, we gather magical trinkets from them, such as their teeth and sometimes even their spines. We can then combine these items at the Witch's Hut to generate powerful buffs for our units. For example, by combining a rotting femur with an elven skull, we can create a consumable that causes our soldiers to explode on death. After giving this item to a group of inebriated farmers, we have effectively converted 120 men into 120 mobilized bricks of C4. The best part is that the more of these trinkets we create, the stronger we become, unlocking new and powerful hexes, which is good, because if we want to have any hope of surviving Armageddon, we're going to need Estancia's final and most influential hex. But that's a long ways away, and the fastest way to get there is by killing a lot of people and harvesting their body parts for arts and crafts projects. So let's continue. With the first faction of elves defeated, we can now begin some infrastructural renovations. Personally, I recommend destroying the Earthen Hollow, because all it does is let you recruit spiders. And I know bug maxing may look cool and fun, but it's not, and it sucks. So we're replacing this with the only building chain you need in the entire game, the Eerie Woods. This allows us to recruit Akshina ambushers, which you will soon realize are absolutely broken. But for now, I need to communicate with my neighbor, and the only language I speak is violence. So I declared war on Marathi and invaded her territory. She attempted to stop us at the Petrified Forest, but remember those Akshina ambushers? Yeah, well, they have the stalk ability, which makes them functionally invisible, and I also unlocked Snipe, which allows them to fire without revealing their position. This combination enables them to stand 20 feet away from someone and shoot them in the side of the head without anyone even noticing. Anyway, I used this technique to slaughter most of Marathi's army, and whoever survived was eventually ground to dust against my meat shield of Eastern Europeans. Truly a horrifying death. Much like a small child doing battle against a steamroller, the Dark Elf military was flattened, at which point they sent us a message begging for peace, and I took that personally. So I divided my armies up and violently acquired the rest of their property. But for each action, there is an equal and opposite reaction, and in this case, it took the form of a horde of men covered in feces marauding their way through my territory and burning my cities to the ground. I wasn't prepared for this, and by the time I stopped them, my economy was devastated. So I had to start getting creative to make money. For example, I sailed across the ocean and attacked Count Noctilus for the crime of violating a restraining order that existed exclusively in my head. The simple act of beating a waterlogged corpse with a hammer had apparently made me a hero among the High Elves, and I was able to forge an alliance with Toranok and sell them back their own settlement for 1700 gold. Not too bad. Around this time, my armies also started doing this weird thing where they would move at superhuman speeds on the campaign map. I don't know how to explain this, but it is equally frightening and convenient. In other news, we engaged in a quest battle against some Skaven and Nurgle warriors, and I'll just summarize it by saying they didn't bring enough missile resistance. By defeating them, we acquired some magical ingredients, 9,000 gold, and we unlocked Estancia's second hex, Coven's Curse Mark. This allows us to target enemy armies on the campaign map and drain their movement points, effectively stun-locking them for 5 turns. Between this and the ambushers, you should be realizing that this faction's existence is predicated entirely on the merits of being a scumbag. Anyway, all of this killing has drawn the attention of a new Kislev hero, the Golden Knight. She's a melee specialist that also has a number of support auras for nearby soldiers, but most importantly, she looks very, very cool. So we recruited her to Estancia's army and prepared for our next move, which is to go from here to here. But how will we do that? Well, if our sweatshop can produce enough gift store trinkets, we'll receive a quest battle to unlock our next major spell, and we can use that to teleport to Kislev. I just need more ingredients, and I think I know where to find them. I declared war on the Sisters of Twilight and structured my whole military philosophy around not fighting them in their god-forsaken settlements. That's just a moral stance I take, because their maps suck. But we can't always get what we want. Don't worry though, I'll tell you exactly how to get through this. Simply enter the battle battle and leave your Akshina ambushers right here. Place the game on triple speed and go smoke 5 or 6 cigarettes. By the time you come back, all of the elves will be dead, and you'll be addicted to nicotine. This tactic allowed Astankya to girl boss her way through the remaining Wood Elf territories, which unlocked our next quest battle. This quest is, on paper, very easy. We're working with one gang of Wood Elves to kill another, and as a supporter of elf-on-elf violence, I was positively thrilled. The issue is this gigantic dickhead needs to survive. I tried to protect him, I really did, but he displayed a mind-boggling amount of suicidal tendencies. For example, he spent the entire battle standing perfectly still and letting enemy archers.
The one thing I will say about RTS like protection missions is usually when you have a character that you need to protect or keep from, dying, the one important thing usually is, well, that you can control them. Here, he has no control over what that character does, so they can just go rushing into enemy fire, even though they're supposed to make sure they survive. It's, not a great thing, honestly. Not great at all. I don't know any RTS game that does this.
Light him on fire.
And not
this
let
caused
you
him
control
to
them.
die and us to fail the quest, which for some reason killed all of my ambushers.
What?
To put it simply, I was pissed. 5 turns later, we tried again, and it went much better, because I successfully disabled the archers by running over them in a toboggan and hitting them with every spell I have access to.
Makes
Clearly
sense.
distraught by the fact he couldn't grief me anymore, my tree man ally wandered off into the forest by himself, leaving me alone to defeat the remaining enemies, and honestly, I was relieved. After a fairly messy battle, we came out on top, unlocking Astankya's teleportation ability. I was pretty hopped up on the high of killing Wood Elves, and in this frenzy, I quickly teleported my main army to Kislev. Perhaps sensing this, our Skaven neighbors declared war on us back at home, launching attacks in the north and the south. I responded with 2 different tactics. In the north, I used my Hex to stunlock the enemy general for 5 turns, and make him watch as I captured all of his territory. I believe he could appreciate this tactic, because, much like the Skaven, it was absolutely filthy. In the south, I intercepted their army and used one of our most powerful trinkets, the Whiff of Madness. By putting this on an enemy, it causes them to suffer a psychotic break, during which they'll spend the entire battle running around in circles until they tire themselves out and give up. I just so happened to have like 15 of these trinkets, so I put them on every unit I could, including the enemy general. We still had to kill a few people just to prove a point, but the trinkets made them so acutely insane that they forgot how their weapons worked, which is why their flamethrower squad is currently frothing at the mouth and charging into melee combat. As you may imagine, this tactic was less than effective. Now back to Kislev. Immediately upon exiting the portal, the first thing I saw was a Wood Elf, and before I could think, my reflexes kicked in, causing me to declare war on their entire faction and eviscerate thousands of non-combatants. Honestly, they shouldn't have put me in a self-defense situation like that. Alright, so we're here in Kislev, and it's kind of a mess. We have mutated rats, sadomasochistic orcs, short people who are not coping well, and a man who probably spends his spare time luxuriating in septic tanks. Truly a sick and twisted assortment of characters, and they're all trying to destroy our capital city. Right now, it belongs to Katerin, but honestly, I really don't trust her. So I'm going to confederate her faction. The only issue is, she thinks we're a bunch of losers and doesn't want to team up. I tried everything to impress her. I massacred 1,700 Wood Elves. She didn't care. I slaughtered over 5,000 orcs. Still nothing. I even tried giving her settlements, but yet she ignored my advances. That's when I took the biggest black pill of all and realized the key to getting the girl of your dreams is not to improve yourself, but rather to make her worse. So from here on out, I started focusing all of my resources on making Katerin lose the war. If we can make her start losing, she just might become desperate enough to accept me into her life. So how can we sabotage her empire? Well, I started by using my teleportation spell to relocate Katerin to the middle of the desert. With her main army now in a sand dune 1,200 miles away, I figured she may be nervous, so I offered a defensive alliance, which I then used to force her into several wars with her neighbors. The pressure was mounting, but she was still holding her own with a second army, so he had to go on vacation as well. Finally, this caused her to start losing ground to the Chaos Dwarves and Skaven, which is when I graciously offered to confederate our factions, and of course, she accepted. Gentlemen, I believe this form of emotional manipulation is what the autistic youth are calling Riz. So, we now own all of Kislev's territories, which immediately...
I didn't know you could do that to the AI factions. Basically, get them to where they're in such a weak points that they'll want to confederate with you. Well, then again, I haven't played in a while, and like I said, I didn't have the third one. Until now, I got it on sale. Yeah, I got the game on sale, thankfully, and, yeah. I really, really want to play it, but all 3 games put together take up so much room that I don't know if I can justify it to myself to play it again. 'Cause, yeah. Anyway.
We put our income at a very impressive negative 8,000 gold per turn.
Ooh.
But after abandoning the North African division of our military, we were back to being profitable, very profitable. This influx of income and military infrastructure allowed me to finally start building armies that weren't just a bunch of Slavic men in explosive vests. I spared no expense. Winged hussars for cav charging our enemies, artillery platforms drawn by polar bears, and an entire army of Ice Guard, which, if you put them under Katarin's command, are actually cheaper to use than even the drunkest and most chromosomally compromised commoners. This might seem like a lot, but we're going to need it, because when we confederated with Katarin, we inherited all of her wars, and Azazel, Throt, Astrogoth Ironhand, Archaean, and Festus are all looking at me in much the same way a dark elf looks at a kindergarten.
He's pulling his cock out!
Unsurprisingly, the next 10 turns involved us being molested, but eventually we managed to stabilize our borders and start picking off our enemies. The first and most immediate threat was Azazel and his army of kinky warriors. They started beating the hell out of me along the west coast, and I have to say, being beaten up by Azazel is especially humiliating, because you know he's not just hurting you, but he's also extracting sexual gratification from it. Disgusting. However, we struck back. For example, I made this trinket that I could put on his spellcasters, and it gives them about a 40% chance for any spell they cast to backfire and blow their head off. With Azazel's commanders taking the Kurt Cobain challenge, I was able to wear down his armies and move Astankia to his capital city, which was defended by Azazel himself, along with an army of sexually liberated deviants. Actually, never mind. I just teleported them to Orion's camp and steamrolled their fortress. That takes care of the Ecstatic Legion. While this was distracting me, Throt took the opportunity to rush our capital city with 2 pretty nasty armies. And with that, the first major defense of Kislev was underway. Our powers made pretty short work of the first army, but they did manage to blast a hole in one of our walls. Normally, this isn't so bad, because you can just block it with some infantry, but they have Gorich, and nothing in my entire roster can block Gorich. So he spent the next 10 minutes at the east wall turning my infantry into a human variant of mashed potatoes. Meanwhile, Throt attacked us to the north. Piss-soaked bullets peppered my battlements, while hordes of filthy rodents scaled the walls. Throt himself crashed through the gates with a posse of mutated rats and started wailing on Katarin. And judging by the pile of mashed-up dog food that has now replaced her face, she's losing that battle pretty bad. Luckily, Throt is losing his battle against my 4 squads of archers, and once we killed him, his units started to scatter, only to be stalked through the streets by my frostworms. Not long after, we won the siege, and with the main Skaven armies destroyed, there was nothing stopping me from auto-resolving the shit out of his capital city. This left Clan Molder in some kind of vegetative state, still technically alive, but so impotent that no one would take them seriously ever again. Back at home, a faction of Dark Elves decided to take a break from their busy schedule of hanging around playgrounds in a trench coat in order to declare war on me. So I shot them with a lot of cannons, and they asked for peace on the next turn. Back to Kislev. With Throt and Azazel defeated, I was able to link up my armies and castrate Astrogoth Ironhand using the medically correct device known as a flintlock pistol. Unsurprisingly, this procedure diminished his enthusiasm to continue the war, and as I stood there hyperventilating with bits of Chaos Dwarf dripping from my bloody knuckles, I realized something. The amount of peace treaties we receive seems to be directly proportional to the number of Chaos Dwarves that we club, so I continued to use Astrogoth as a punching bag until I had convinced everyone to leave me alone. The only holdout was Festus. I know Festus may look like a little piss baby, but he's actually quite dangerous, so I teleported in some reinforcements. However, he was waiting for that, and he absolutely slaughtered us. This was an army full of artillery that I had just recruited, and losing it made me briefly consider crushing the cyanide capsule in my back left molar. But before I had the chance, I was interrupted by this.
What? Oh! Fuck. You forgot about that.
The vampire apocalypse has started, and it's so bad that despite being one of the strongest factions in the game, you can't even see me on the balance of power. After this happened, Festus and I looked at each other in bewilderment and quickly settled on a peace agreement. We're now in a difficult position. We need to kill Vlad, but he's nestled in between like 25 other vampires, and if we overextend ourselves, they could rush Kislev and make us lose the campaign. But on the upside, I've spent the last 15 turns outfitting my armies with the latest Eastern European technology. For example, Yevgeny Turin has an army of over 2,500 pet spiders. Ostankya has an army of vaguely civilized Gopniks, and Valentin has a formidable front line along with several cannons. Altogether, we're ready for anything. So, what's the plan? Well, Vlad is being very defensive, and he seems to be fixated entirely on this settlement. So I took 4 of my armies and flanked them around to the west, while Ostankya stayed behind to defend. In the west, I encountered some of his auxiliary forces, and they were very well equipped with a variety of undead monstrosities. But there is one very key ingredient that he does not have access to. Gun. Using our superior firepower, we blasted our way down to Schwarzhaven and captured the city. From here, we do a little trolling. Since we control a settlement in the same province as Vlad, I can use a purification chant to cleanse the entire region from all vampiric corruption. After doing this, each of his armies started taking attrition damage for not being in vampiric territory. If we can just hold them off long enough, their entire military will crumble, and then we can swing in, beat the hell out of Vlad, and be back home in time for traditionally delicious jellied meat. The only issue is, this little maneuver pissed them off pretty good, and they attacked Ostankya with 3 full armies. Fortunately, I've prepared for this moment, because I have accumulated an extensive stockpile of grotesque trinkets, which I began liberally distributing among the attackers. Every opposing commander is now violently insane. The infantry have a 100 DPS curse that is contagious. Oh, and minus 20% movement speed on your cavalry? Don't mind if I do. By the time I was finished, I had applied about 45 debuffs to the enemies. I loaded into the battle and noticed that about half of the vampire's units are already in rampage mode. That's exactly when I began edging. They attempted to organize their forces, but this was made considerably more difficult by me blowing their heads off with a crossbow. Eventually, they assembled something vaguely resembling a military formation and started shambling across the field towards us. My front line is equipped with axes and flintlock pistols, and we started wearing the vampires down on approach. But eventually, they overwhelmed my gun line through human wave tactics, and the melee began. This first wave was an absolute slaughter that lasted around 10 minutes and burnt through about 70% of our ammunition. Thankfully, it got easier from here. You see, they have thousands of reinforcements, but there's a limit to how many units can be on the field at a time. And since they already have 1,500 soldiers dicking around in frenzy mode, they're only getting a slow stream of actually lucid soldiers to attack us with. Given this, we were able to slowly digest his entire army over the next 30 minutes. And that's when I stopped edging. After this battle, I pulled Ostankya back to Fort Chikova to recover. She's in rough shape, but at least the entire vampire military is slowly decomposing. Actually, no. They're not. They appear to be taking refuge at Castle Tempelhof, which is the only vampiric province left on the map. But that's alright, because I've got a plan B. You see, we finally have our quest battle to unlock the most powerful spell in the entire game. Malediction of Ruin is a single-use ability that nukes an entire faction, hitting their armies with massive attrition and depopulating their cities. If we nail the vampires with this, it's a death sentence, and all we have to do to get it is win this quest battle. Honestly, I'm going to consolidate this battle a lot, because it pretty much boiled down to us being attacked by 5 different undead armies one after another, each led by a necromancer, specter, or banshee. After shooting said necromancer, specter, or banshee with 1,700 crossbow bolts, they promptly died, which caused their army to physically dematerialize. We did that 5 times in a row, casted a few big spells to clean up the leftovers, and before long the battle was over and we had unlocked our new spell. This was it. 100 turns of empire building, tens of thousands of casualties, and a whole garage full of weird body parts. It all led up to this moment right here, where I apply the Malediction of Ruin to Vlad and wipe his faction off the map. My hand tentatively hovered over the button as if I was about to melt a bunch of Japanese people with a nuclear weapon. I clicked it, leaned back in my chair, and Reggie, it didn't work. I waited about 5 turns, nothing was happening. Vlad still had like 20 full stack armies and his cities were absolutely fine. It's safe to say I was more than a little upset, but it's okay because I always come prepared with a plan C. Before failing catastrophically, plans A and B relied heavily on attrition, which is why you may be disappointed but also unsurprised to hear that plan C is again about attrition. You see, I've been very effective in containing Vlad to Sylvania, and at this point he has only 2 settlements, Castle Drakenhof and Eschen, but since they don't have vampiric corruption, his armies aren't defending them. So all I need to do is destroy his last 2 cities, at which point his faction will begin to dissolve. The first target will be his capital city. I besieged it with 4 full armies, and was somewhat shocked to be greeted by a crushing defeat auto-resolve. After starting the battle, I realized the problem. Vampire castles appear to convey a debuff of -70 leadership on all of my units. For reference, most units don't even have 70 leadership in the first place. This resulted in half of my army immediately deserting me, with the other half being as emotionally stable as your average League of Legends player. I don't want to sound like a diva, but this was bullshit. Which is why I had no problem using my own variety of immoral strategies. If you're going to terror rout my entire army after 5 minutes of fighting, I'll spend those 5 minutes destroying your walls with cannons and pelting all of your soldiers with frozen arrows. And then, when I'm forced to retreat, I'll come back and do the whole thing all over again because I've refilled my ammunition. I had to do this 4 times on the same turn before the vampires were so horribly disfigured that they just kind of gave up. Only one more city to go. I passed the turn with victory in my eyes and triumph pumping through my veins. And that's when we were presented with a unique opportunity. We need to kill Vlad to win, but for the past 20 turns he's been in some kind of witness protection program. But right now, he's out of position. All that's between us and him is 8 vampire armies. So I gathered up my 5 stack and began barreling down on him. Fortunately, I was able to auto-resolve the first 4 armies, but the next 4, which included Vlad himself, weren't so easy. For this, our final battle, I would have to rely on my hundreds of hours of tactical knowledge to implement the most ingenious battle strategy imaginable. Or, I could just set up all my units in the corner like a filthy degenerate. Obviously, I did the latter. You might consider this to be in poor taste, but all of my armies are half dead, I burnt through most of my trinkets, and if we lose this battle, I'm going to commit an honor killing on myself. So I don't have much of a choice. Optimally, we all survive, but really, I don't care. As long as we can assassinate Vlad, I'm calling it a campaign victory and taking a handful of random pills in celebration. The battle started with the undead organizing their forces. In response, I sent a delegation of Bulgarians to remind the vampires that I hate them. This initiated the Great Undead March. Vlad led the charge by absorbing 700 arrows to the face, but his regeneration was keeping him in the fight. Fortunately, I've got some more tricks up my sleeve. For example, as the legions of ghouls crashed against my lines, I pushed forward my incarnate beasts. This allowed the enemy units to gather around my incarnate, which gives me the perfect opportunity to cast every vortex spell in my library. The Witch's Cauldron is a new one, and it's very powerful, but in terms of raw efficiency, Heart of Winter is absolutely unreal. Every time I'd cast a spell, the balance of power would shift in our favor, but the vampires have an ungodly amount of reinforcements, which would push it.
Sorry, I just needed to sneeze there. That just came out of nowhere, and I was not ready for that,
right back. However, we also have reinforcements, including an army of 20 spiders, each one armed with the Explode on Death trinket. I had them skitter across the map and begin dive-bombing the enemy from behind. This helped me free up the left flank and close in on Vlad, who is now sporting about 7 debuffs and substantially less health than he would prefer. Eventually, my Frostworm was able to beat the life out of him, thereby securing our moral victory. But the battle was still raging on, and my front line didn't exist anymore. We did have a late resurgence thanks to this trinket, which allows my soldiers to transform into gigantic bears when they get low on health. But over time, they too fell to the hordes of the undead. I stared off into the sunset as the final remnants of my army crumbled before me, waiting patiently for the defeat screen to greet me. This was the definition of a bittersweet battle. We did kill Vlad, but paid the ultimate price for it. Fortunately, the allies of Order rally in support of us, and to them, I leave the rest. Mostly because it's 5 AM and I don't have time to kill 20 more full stacks. So that's going to be it for this video. We've weaponized child labor, old people witchcraft, and Slavic customs to save the world from a vampire apocalypse. Thank you to the channel patrons, our sponsor, Displate, and finally, thank you for watching.
It was definitely an enjoyable watch. But yeah, I've never gotten to play Kislev. I hope I can do it soon. I can't stream the game. I wish I could, but my computer is not powerful enough for that. Sometimes it's just annoying at times, but yeah. So, I'll say this. If you guys like what I'm doing, please do consider liking, subscribing, checking out my other stuff. It's I'm very thankful when you guys do that. But yeah, comment down below what other videos you want us to see, and I will check in on you guys later. Good luck to yourselves, and take care of yourselves, alright? Bye.